Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to meet you all virtually today. Today, we're going to be talking about designing for new internet users. Who are these users and what are they, and how do you design for them? But before diving deep into them, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Rahul Goradia, and I'm a product designer from India. I'm currently working for Microsoft, but before this, I was working at a company called Meesho, where we built e commerce solutions for these new internet users. I want to talk to you a little bit about my background before we go dive deep into this. So, I come from Ahmedabad, city in India, and I grew up in a middle class Indian family where we're all close together and live together. So, in a typical uh, Indian family, all of us tend to live with each other. So, my parents, grandparents, and sometimes even their brothers and sisters. So, it's a very big, happy family. But while I was growing up, my dad had to move to the US because of his job. And although my grandparents were really proud of him and very happy for him, they were a bit sad because they wanted to interact with their grandkids more. I'm sure grandparents all over the world would love to spend time with their grandchildren. But my dad seeing my grandparents sad, he didn't like it. So what he did, I still really remember, he bought them their first laptop. I think it was the first laptop in our home at that time. And I still remember it was a Sony Wire laptop, right? And so, with the help of few Mbps of internet and Skype, they were actually able to interact with us. They were able to see us. They were able to talk to us, and they were stunned. They could not believe what they were seeing. They were like, "How is it possible that I'm interacting with you through a glass, through a surface, right?" And I still remember them calling it magic, right? And the internet has come a long way, right? So the internet now you can reach out to anyone uh, across the world in a second through social media, right? Uh, Children nowadays have access to internet and education right at the fingertips. I mean, people don't need to go to school anymore to learn something new. You can learn it right at home. You can literally shop for anything online, from groceries to food to clothes. You can have it right at your doorstep. And even at times in need, when you need attention, medical attention, you can get immediate help from the internet, right? So now we've seen that the internet is extremely useful and we use it in our everyday lives, whether like you're talking to someone on social media or whether you're designing on your favorite app, right? So the internet has come a long way, and for some people who don't have access to the internet, it's not fair. And the internet has now become a necessity, right? It's something which we need to live our day-to-day lives, right? But what about people who don't have access to the internet or who are just getting access to the internet? Like, how is their life and how do they interact with the internet? So let's take a look at some of the places where the internet is emerging. All right. So over here you have here it's basically a pictorial representation of uh, the access of the internet across each country, right? And you'll notice that some countries in Africa, South Asia, Indonesia are just slowly starting to get access to the internet. So, and this is changing because governments want this, right? For a multiple number of reasons. So, one, it can help you lift the country out of poverty, right? It helps building digital payments, digital banking solutions for people to transact with other people, to take loans, right? It also helps in education, right? As you've seen through the pandemic, people can learn at the comfort of their homes, right? And just global participation in general, interacting on social media and other platforms, right? So this is increasing. In fact, you'll be very shocked to know that around 3 billion people were onboarded to the internet from these emerging markets in the last 15 years, which is a crazy amount of growth that we have seen, right? So let's zoom in a bit further as to why is this change happening? Like, how is this change happening? So today I'd like to talk about uh, India specifically, and how is it changing in India, and why you should, if you're someone looking to expand in this global market, here's how it's happening, and here's what you should do. Right. So speaking about India, so India has had a massive growth. Uh, Even though only 50% of its population is online right now. So close to around 40-50%, which is around 749 million people are online right now. Right? This has grown tremendously over the past few years, but it's even expected to grow even further to around 1.5 billion people by 2040. But what is powering this change, right? So let's go through why is this change happening. So people in India are now having access to cheaper smartphones, right? So we might be using $1,000 phones like iPhones, Google Pixels, and stuff like that, right? People in India have access to $60 smartphones, right? So they might not be technology as advanced as what we use, but it gets the job done, right? They can use the internet, they can talk to friends and family who have moved away. It's very convenient for them, and it's very affordable for people coming from these emerging markets. Data has become significantly cheaper. In around 2015, 1 GB of internet was cost $206, which is close to $3, right? But because of the infrastructure change, Indians can now use it for only 18 rupees, which is hardly 16 cents. This makes internet affordable for everyone.
Can I just go? Yeah.
And a lot of companies like Facebook, Google are doing a lot of global initiatives to ensure that they acquire a lot of users as well, right? For example, Facebook is setting up multiple hotspots in multiple villages inside the country, right? Google is hosting a digital literacy program for women. So a lot of companies also see this market and uh, try out different initiatives for them to allow people to get onboarded onto the internet, right? It's very fascinating. So now that we've understood that this change is happening and there are a lot of people coming on the internet, you might ask me, Rahul, like what does this mean? It's okay that people are coming on the internet, but why do we have to do anything differently? Let me tell you why. So the way the people experience it for the first time is extremely different to what we have done. Let me ask you guys a question. When was the first time you experienced the internet? I'm pretty sure it was on a desktop or a laptop where you were exposed to a website, or you're probably exposed to at school, university, where you interacted with an interface and probably studied it as well, right? So your experiences are built on websites. But for these people, it's extremely different. Let's look why, right? So the first experience are completely different because they're smartphone first. They've never seen any other interface. As laptops and desktops are a bit more expensive, they don't have access to these things. So their first experience are generally on their mobile, which they've used, right? Secondly, they interact with experiences which are in poor connectivity. Although they might be getting access to the internet, they might not have as high speeds like as we use. So we use our data in 5G and 4G, where they typically might use it in 2G, right? And their first experiences are also not in their local language. They tend to be in English or any common language. And for a place like India, which has so many diverse languages and dialects, people are very accustomed to the local language and they're very comfortable in that. So the literacy rate for languages like English is not very high in India, right? Although some people do understand English, but they might not understand it fully. So these are the things you might need to keep in mind while designing first experiences for them. Now, we can also look at a mini framework, uh, which is what should you keep in mind while designing for them, right? So this is a mini framework. It's called the three C's, and it consists of connectivity, complexity, and comprehension. So we'll dive a bit into each one of them, and we'll go through some examples, right? So this could be kind of a mini checklist you can have while designing for these emerging markets, right? So connectivity. Uh, Users are mostly on prepaid plans in these emerging markets, right? And they're very careful with the amount of data they're using. So prepaid plans are nothing but plans where a person might give money for a certain amount of data. So I might give you 18 rupees and I can use 1 GB of data, right? And people are very careful in using the amount of data that they use, right? They're very conscious about the data they use, right? So they ensure that they use minimum amount of data for small things like videos, downloading apps. So what this means is you need to keep your app extremely light and extremely quick to use, even in 2G networks. For example, the Meesho app is only 14.5 MB on the Play Store, and it hardly has any updates. They're done automatically. So comparing to any other e-commerce app on the market, it's extremely light, and users are able to download it very easily, not sacrificing their data at all. And a lot of global players also are doing this. Uh, just an example, Meesho was the most downloaded app in October just because of this, just because of its sheer lightness. All the other global players are following this as well. Companies like Uber have also heavily invested into these ideas, right? So Uber has launched an app called Uber Lite, which is only 5 MB compared to its 300 MB counterpart, right? And what it is basically it's removed all the things which takes high data consumption. So there's no map, there's no mini cars, there's no complex animations or transitions. It's extremely simple to use. You just add in where you are, add the place you want to go, select your mode of transport, and it'll notify you when the driver is where the driver is, right? So this is like one of the things which a lot of global players are doing. Even Facebook launched its Facebook Lite version here, which is basically a web-based application which opens up, right, which doesn't take that much time to load. So ensure you solve for connectivity. Let's talk about complexity now. So users tend to get anxiety when they're bombarded with a lot of information. You need to understand that users are seeing interfaces for the first time, and they're extremely scared of what they see, and they're extremely cautious, right? So try to keep your design simple and easy to use. Users should be guided and not overwhelmed. Don't scare them. Teach them and help them. For example, this is the old Meesho card page. For us, it might seem pretty easy to understand. I just need to select a payment method. I have my price breakup details, whatever items I've added to the card, and I can pay and proceed, right? But for someone coming from an emerging market who cannot read that much as well, this is too much of a cognitive load. You need to guide the user and help them. So to reduce this user anxiety, the Meesho team has divided the process into four parts. It might seem that it's lengthy, but this solves comprehension a lot, right? So this allows people to go through it step by step and ensures that they know which step the payment is happening, right? So this is one of the things you can do. You should also let the technology and design do the work for the user. For example, the incredible innovation done on the digital payment side in India is extremely useful. So if someone wants to get onboarded on the UPI payments on the Google Pay app, what you need to do is just add your phone number, select your bank. Google will then verify with your bank and phone number if you have an account, and then you are ready to go. You can literally start transacting with your friends. It even shows the topmost contacts you use to allow you for frequent transactions. So over here, technology and design is doing the work for the user. If you've noticed, user didn't input any information other than his phone number and the bank, but the design and technology did the work for them. So try to guide these users, don't overwhelm them. Last but not least, let's talk about comprehension. So like we discussed earlier, a lot of internet users struggle with lower literacy, especially in English. They're very comfortable in their local language, right? And you can try to solve this by using visual cues such as icons, illustrations. In fact, if you can use motion with them, that's even better. So let me tell you a small story. So filters, right? We all of us know how to use filters. They're basically used to filter out content, right? But people coming from emerging markets can't read, right? So they don't use filters or know how to categorize them. So the folks at Meesho, what they did was they tried to imagine shopping in the real life experience. Like we discussed, people aren't seeing interfaces. They aren't seeing apps like Amazon and then coming and shopping, right? So they try to ask themselves, how do people buy while they shop offline? So what you would do is you'd go look at the material, feel the material, see how it feels, right? So that is what they want to do with filters, and they launched high visibility filters, which basically also shows the material how it looks. I mean, we can't tell users how it feels, but people can actually look at the material or the clothing item and select it very easily. And they saw an 80% adoption increase in the use of filters. Isn't it crazy? Just by using visual cues, you can get such great improvements. Right. Now we've discussed that people can't usually read. So what are the mediums that we can try? Right. So voice is a very interesting medium, which a lot of companies are trying right now, right? And it's especially helpful for people who have lower literacy levels. Voice input also solves for spelling complexities. India has a lot of languages, right? And so spellings translating to English might vary a lot, right? And even if users are using different keyboards, it's very hard to type in them. For example, Hindi has a lot more letters compared to the English alphabet, right? So it takes a lot of time for users to type as well. It can be extremely frustrating. So you can solve this by using voice. For example, at Meesho, we have incorporated this search using voice feature. So people can just tap and then search through their voice. So this reduces any spelling complexities as well. And try to keep all these points cohesive. As you're seeing over here, we're also using visual and motion to tell the user that they have to speak by clicking on this icon, making this experience extremely comprehensive for the user. They understand what they have to do in this step. And even Google Assistant, right? So Google Assistant for emerging markets has also been it offline. So there's a toll-free number which people can call, and the Assistant can aid them. So a lot of companies like Google as well are heavily investing into voice with the Google Assistant, right? So to summarize, you need to take into account low internet speed connections, ensure your app is light and fast, right? Try to reduce text-based dependencies, try to support them with icons, illustrations, animations if you can, right? Don't shy away from using voice, right? Voice can be used to solve a lot of complexities. And majorly try to handhold users for success, try to guide them, right? Don't let them get scared, right? So these are the things I have learned, but how did I learn them, right? So this can also vary from different cultures to different markets, right? So to ensure you have your own learnings, the best way I would say is, again, just talking to users and testing your designs at an early stage of a design process, right? This can help you maximize your learnings. So let's talk about how we user test, right? So before we would test face to face, but now with COVID and the pandemic, all of us are at home, so, right? But I think that's also a pretty good thing where we can test right at home, and a lot of benefits for testing with users at home, right? You're at the comfort of your home. It's also inclusive, so you can talk to a lot of people from the country sitting at home, right? You can get different opinions from different people. It's also cheap and efficient, right? So there are a lot of benefits to remote user testing. And these are some of the challenges you might face while interacting with these users in user testing from low emerging markets. So, like we mentioned or we discussed, like apps like Zoom, Skype, Google Meet are very heavy apps, right? So they would not be interested in downloading 200, 300 MB apps. You need to keep it very light, right? And they don't understand things like screen share, right? So these are challenges you might face while talking to these users, right? You need to keep sometimes the prototype might not load as well, right? So these are some of the challenges you might face, and these are the things you can do to solve them, right? So I recommend using Lookback for recording. So Lookback on the mobile app is hardly a 6 MB app, so users can still download it. And for the team using it as well, you can enter your Figma prototypes, and you can also record these sessions, take notes, right? So it's a really great tool for you to use, so that you can record your call as well. And it's very easy for the user installing the app on their phone to install as well. So I recommend Lookback. Compress images if you can. So the lighter the prototype, the easier it is to load. And essentially, main data comes from images which they might have downloaded. So just a pro tip, you can download this tiny image compressor, which compresses all the images at one go. And you can just press Command Shift K to then keep adding it in your prototype, right? So ensure you use this compress images plugin if you can. So if there are really long flows, right, for user flows, try to break them down if you can and test them in multiple parts. So this not only allows the user to test all of these very easily, and it's not too much a heavy load for them to load on, right? So these are the ways you can solve these small problems while for these emerging markets, right? Uh, so now that we've discussed, right, we've discussed a lot of things from uh, how are people getting on board with the internet, why is this change happening, and some of the things you can use to design for these emerging markets, right? And I believe that the responsibility for designers is just increasing, right? Because of the pandemic, this importance for designing for new internet users has increased a lot. For example, people who are going to school before might have stopped or not going, right? So what can we do for those people, right? Things like that. So yeah, this makes designers more vital than ever before. And I wish everyone designs for social good and helps people like these in these tough times, right? Yeah, and with that we come to an end. I really hope you enjoyed this talk, and I really hope I was able to add value. So thank you guys for joining. If you guys want to learn more about these initiatives, a lot of companies are doing it. So feel free to check out Google's Next Billion Users initiative, or even stuff Microsoft is doing for inclusivity, right? You can also check out the Meesho Tech blog. So they have these blogs written in detail about their user studies and stuff like that. So feel free to check those out. You could also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, where I keep posting about these design hacks and things for these new internet users. So thank you so much for joining, and it was a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you.